You know, in the wild world of social media, a celebrity's whole image can be built up or just completely torn down in a single viral moment. Today, we're going to deconstruct the online narratives that are defining and, yeah, in some cases, totally derailing some of the biggest names out there. From super awkward A-listers to some very calculated rebrands, let's get into the stories that have everyone talking. And just to be clear, this isn't about us playing detective and separating fact from fiction. Nope, this is all about digging into those powerful stories that spread like wildfire online, the perceptions and the controversies that really shape how we end up seeing these stars. We're diving right into the public's reaction to see what's sticking, starting with pop's most watched power couple. So first up, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. I mean, what started out looking like a total fairy tale romance has been under a microscope from the second it began. But lately, public opinion has started to shift a little bit, and a lot of people online are starting to question what's really going on behind all the cameras. And really, the entire conversation just boils down to this one question. Is this the real deal, or is it just a masterclass in PR? The speculation really hit a fever pitch after they showed up at the iHeart Radio Music Awards. I mean, millions of people were watching, and every single look, every gesture was picked apart. Sometimes a single comment just perfectly captures what everybody's thinking. And this one, it absolutely exploded online. The idea that they have the chemistry of cousins just resonated with so many viewers who were watching and feeling like, yeah, there's just no spark there. And that just opened the floodgates. People started rewatching clips, pointing to footage where Travis just seemed kind of checked out, almost zoned out. This idea that he looked more like our bodyguard than our partner became this huge running joke, and it just kept fueling that theory that this whole thing might be just for show. So, if you boil it all down, the internet's final verdict was uncomfy and awkward. People online were saying their interactions were almost painful to watch. Some even joked they'd seen characters in The Sims act more naturally together. It's a pretty fascinating look at just how fast the public can turn on a celebrity romance. Okay, so moving from awkward vibes to, well, a full-on physical transformation, our next story is all about Aaron Taylor Johnson. He's this incredibly talented actor, but his recent change in appearance has left the internet completely speechless and honestly asking a ton of questions. I mean, the side-by-side comparison is just, wow, it's pretty stark. Online, the speculation is running rampant. A lot of people are pointing to possible Botox or cosmetic fillers. And one of the biggest theories floating around is that his wife, who's 24 years older than him, might have influenced this new look. It's drawing all these comparisons to other celebrity couples where one partner seems to be kind of directing the other's whole aesthetic. The public shock was so real, and I think comments like this one just capture it perfectly. It's not just that he looks different. To a lot of people, it's like he's a completely different person. It created this weird, uncanny valley effect for his fans who just found him totally unrecognizable. And the reactions were intense. I mean, sure, some people made jokes, like comparing him to the love child of other actors. But a much more serious story started to form, connecting his new look directly to his controversial marriage. Some were even accusing his wife of draining him of his natural beauty. For so many fans, the change was so jarring, it just gave them the ick, that sudden feeling of repulsion, and it totally changed how they saw him. Okay, let's pivot and talk about a rising star who is fighting battles on two totally different fronts right now. Chappell Roan has built this whole brand around being an authentic indie darling. But now the internet is starting to poke holes in that story. So this is the image she's built, right? She's the rebel, she's anti-establishment, a voice for the outsiders. At a recent event, she very loudly and publicly declared, "Fuck the Grammys," which really puts her in a position of fighting against the big music industry machine. But then, the internet detectives started digging, and they found some stuff that seems to totally contradict that image, leading to all these accusations of her being an industry plant. An artist who's marketed as indie but is secretly backed by corporate money. That summer camp she talked about? Turns out it was actually Grammy Camp, a super expensive, industry-run program. And Papa Chappell? Reportedly a multimillionaire. When you throw in a conservative politician for an uncle, that indie darling story starts to look a whole lot more complicated. So you would think the industry plant stuff was enough drama for one person, right? Well, nope. She then got tangled up in this completely separate and bizarre controversy involving a bodyguard and an 11-year-old girl. It is a classic case of online rumors just spinning out of control, so let's break it down. Okay, so here's what went down. A video popped up online of a bodyguard confronting an 11-year-old girl in a hotel. Chappell Roan happened to be nearby, so the internet immediately jumped to conclusions and blamed her. And that story took off. But then, there was a twist. The bodyguard later came out and clarified he wasn't working for Chappell at all. He was actually protecting Sabrina Carpenter. Both singers were at the same hotel for a festival, and it just led to this massive case of mistaken identity that had already kind of damaged Chappell's reputation.
All right, let's move on to an artist who was, at one point, at the absolute top of the pop culture mountain, but whose star now seems to be fading, and fast. We're talking about Justin Timberlake, who's reportedly facing a huge crisis in both his career and his marriage.
And for Justin Timberlake, it's not just one thing going wrong. It's like a perfect storm. His last tour reportedly really underperformed, his acting career has cooled off, and insiders are claiming his marriage to Jessica Biel is at a breaking point. And then, to top it all off, came that really embarrassing body cam footage from his recent traffic stop, which just added public humiliation to all his other problems. So with all these setbacks piling up, there's one major theory making the rounds online, that with his solo career struggling, Timberlake might have to eat some humble pie and finally agree to a full-blown NSYNC reunion. The thinking is that he just doesn't have the leverage anymore to demand a bigger paycheck than the other guys, and a reunion tour might be his only real way forward right now.
Okay, for our last section, we're going to look at two absolute music legends who are on very different paths. One is navigating a really fragile, very public recovery, while the other is in the middle of a very, very calculated attempt to rebrand his entire image.
First, Britney Spears. And look, there are some real glimmers of hope in what some people are starting to call her healing era. She was recently seen reuniting with her sons, which is a huge, huge step. But of course, online commenters were quick to point out the timing, noting that the reunion happened right as their child support payments were ending, which kicked off this pretty cynical debate about everyone's motives.
It really feels like her path forward is a mix of good signs and some pretty worrying ones. On one hand, during a recent traffic stop, she was totally cooperative and tested 0% for alcohol. That's a clear positive. But on the other hand, reports that her loved ones are creating a plan for her have set off all kinds of alarm bells for her fans, who are understandably terrified of anything that sounds even remotely like another conservatorship.
And now let's talk about Jay-Z. He's facing what might be one of the most serious public image crises of his entire career. And amid some very serious allegations, he is actively trying to get control of the story and reframe the whole conversation. So, in a recent GQ interview, he addressed the allegations using this really emotional language, saying he was heartbroken and filled with uncontrollable anger. Then he brought his daughter, Blue Ivy, into it, explaining his anger was connected to her somehow finding out. A lot of people online immediately saw this as a manipulative tactic, basically using his daughter to try and get sympathy for himself.
So after looking at all of these stories, it leads us to this one big, crucial question. From Taylor Swift's perceived chemistry to Jay-Z's carefully worded interview, who really controls a celebrity's legacy in this day and age? Is it the star, their PR machine, or is it the millions of us, online, shaping the narrative one comment, one meme, one post at a time? It really is a power struggle playing out for everyone to see. Thanks for tuning in.